Welcome. I am Melesias. Tonight, we are not opening a book. We are opening a tomb. A tomb that was sealed in 1897, but whose occupant has never truly died. It is a story written not by a novelist, but by a theatre manager, an Irishman who spent 7 years of his life buried in the British Museum Library, studying ancient folklore, obscure maps, and the whispered legends of Eastern Europe. He was a man who understood drama, who knew how to build a scene, how to make an audience hold their breath. And the story he crafted, stitched together from journal entries, letters, and newspaper clippings, was not just a novel. It was a trap. A trap designed to make you believe, page by page, that the monster he had invented was real. We are opening Dracula by Bram Stoker. Stoker did not invent the vampire. The creature has existed in folklore for centuries. But he did something far more powerful. He gave the vampire a face, a name, and a personality. He took the old, rotting corpse of Eastern European myth and transformed it into an immortal, aristocratic predator. His Count was no shambling ghoul. He was a creature of terrifying intelligence, seductive charm, and ancient, evil nobility. He was a parasite, not just on blood, but on life itself. And the legend he drew his inspiration from was not entirely myth. Stoker had read the accounts of a 15th-century Wallachian prince, a man who defended his land against the Ottoman Empire with a savagery that became legendary. A man who impaled his enemies on stakes and was known by a name that would echo through history, Vlad Dracula. The son of the dragon. Stoker took the name, the geography, the whisper of a blood-soaked history, and from it, he conjured a new and terrible god for a modern world. The novel itself was a revolution in form. It is not told by a single, all-knowing voice. It is a collage of voices, a dossier of terror. The story unfolds through the private journals of a young English solicitor, the letters of his fiancée, the frantic telegrams of a doctor, the log of a doomed sea captain. This technique, the epistolary form, creates an intimacy, a sense of fragmented reality, that draws the reader in like no other. We are not just told the story. We are shown the evidence. We become the detectives, piecing together the horror from the words of the people who lived it. They are not characters recounting a finished tale. They are witnesses, writing in the grip of terror, unaware of who will survive to the final page. And the story begins not in the foggy streets of London, but in the wild, untamed mountains of Transylvania. It begins with a journey, a business trip, an innocent young man traveling to meet a client whose very name is an omen. It begins with Jonathan Harker, a carriage, and a road leading into the heart of a nightmare. So, lock your doors. Light a candle. We are about to enter a world of ancient evil, a world where the dead do not stay dead, and where the only thing more terrifying than the monster itself is the slow, creeping realization that it is real. Let us begin the story of Dracula. Let us begin with the journal of Jonathan Harker. Let us begin the journey to the castle. Part 1, The Castle and the Carpathians, the Journal of Jonathan Harker. My friend. Welcome to the Carpathians. I am writing this by the light of a single candle, and I do not know if I will survive the night. These are the words, not of a fictional hero, but of Jonathan Harker, a young, earnest English solicitor, sent on a simple business trip to a distant land. His journal is the first voice we hear in this symphony of terror. He is writing to document a property transaction, but what he will document instead is his own slow, creeping descent into a world of unimaginable horror. His journey begins on a train, crossing the vast, sun-drenched Hungarian plains, a landscape of picturesque beauty. But as he travels deeper into Transylvania, the beauty fades. The mountains grow taller, darker, their peaks shrouded in an oppressive, eternal mist. The people he meets, simple peasants, cross themselves and make signs against the evil eye when they hear the name of his client. They press crucifixes and garlic flowers into his hands, weeping, as if they are watching a dead man walk. The final leg of his journey is the most terrifying. At the Borgo Pass, he is met not by the Count's own carriage, but by a mysterious caleche driven by a coachman with a hideous, almost luminous red gleam in his eyes. The journey through the pass is a nightmare of speed and supernatural terror. Wolves howl, their cries echoing through the dark, jagged peaks. The coachman seems to control them with a word. A strange, blue flame flickers beside the road, and the coachman leaps from the carriage to investigate it, leaving Harker alone and paralyzed with fear. The very laws of nature seem to be suspended. At last, the caleche arrives at a vast, ruined courtyard. The driver vanishes. Harker is left standing before a single, massive, iron-studded door, his knock echoing into a profound, empty silence. The door creaks open by itself and a tall, pale, elderly man, dressed entirely in black, bids him welcome. It is the Count. He says, with the most courteous and chilling formality, "Enter freely and of your own will. I am Dracula." In the days that follow, Harker's unease deepens. The Count is unfailingly polite, a charming and erudite host. But the details are monstrously wrong. He is never seen eating or drinking. He casts no reflection in Harker's shaving mirror, and when he sees it, he flies into a silent rage, smashing the glass and throwing it out the window. He recoils from the crucifix Harker wears. His skin is cold, his breath is rank, and there is a faint, sickening smell of decay about him. He is a creature of the night, his powers waxing as the sun sets. Harker realizes he is a prisoner. The doors are locked. The wolves patrol the courtyard. He is trapped in a medieval fortress with a being who is not human, a monster who plans to descend upon England like a plague. Desperate, Harker disobeys the Count's warning not to fall asleep in a strange room. He wanders into a distant wing of the castle, a place of ancient dust and forgotten centuries. There, in a room lit by pale moonlight, he encounters three ghostly women. They are the Weird Sisters, the brides of Dracula. They are beautiful and voluptuous, with brilliant white teeth and blood-red lips. And they are hungry. They surround him, their whispers a perverse lullaby of seduction and death. One of them bends her head towards his neck. He feels her cold, soft lips on his throat, the sharp scrape of her teeth. And then, a hand seizes her. The Count has arrived, his face contorted with a terrible, possessive fury. "This man belongs to me," he hisses, and in place of the young man, he throws them a squirming, terrified child in a bag. The brides vanish. Harker is left in a swoon, the full, depraved horror of his situation finally crashing down upon him. Harker knows he must escape or die trying. He has seen the Count crawl down the sheer face of the castle wall, face down, his cloak spreading out like the wings of a giant bat. He has seen 50 great wooden boxes filled with the earth of the Count's homeland, placed in the chapel. He understands that the vampire must sleep in this unholy ground. He understands the monster is leaving for England. And he understands that he will be left behind to be consumed by the brides. With the courage of a desperate man, he waits for the right moment, scales the castle wall, and makes a frantic, terrifying dash for his life into the mountains, into the howling of the wolves, and towards the distant, uncertain promise of safety. Part 2, The Ship of Death and the Lady in the Tomb. The horror did not arrive with a scream, but with a whisper. It came from the sea. A Russian schooner, the Demeter, was spotted off the coast of Whitby, in Yorkshire. It sailed with a strange, unnatural speed, driven by a wind that seemed to obey no earthly law. When it finally crashed against the rocks, a great, dark shape, like a huge dog, leaped from the bow and vanished into the night. When the rescuers boarded the ship, they found only silence and death. The captain was lashed to the wheel, a crucifix clutched in his dead hand, his face a mask of unspeakable terror. The logbook told a story of creeping madness, of a malevolent presence that stalked the crew one by one, until only the captain was left. The Count, the monster from the castle, had arrived in England, bringing his ancient, hungry evil to the modern world. In the idyllic seaside town of Whitby, a young woman named Mina Murray was waiting for news of her fiancé, Jonathan Harker. She was staying with her dearest friend, the beautiful and innocent Lucy Westenra. Mina was sharp, resourceful, and deeply in love. Lucy was gentle, vibrant, and full of life, a creature of pure sunshine. But a strange melancholy began to fall upon Lucy. She started sleepwalking, drawn, as if by some unseen force, to a bench in the old churchyard overlooking the sea. Mina, ever watchful, would find her there in the dead of night, her eyes open but vacant, her skin cold. And on her neck, 2 tiny, red pinpricks began to fester. The sunshine was being drained from her, drop by drop, while a creature of darkness fed on her life. Lucy's health deteriorated rapidly. Her fiancé, the aristocratic Arthur Holmwood, was consumed by grief. Another of her suitors, Dr. John Seward, the administrator of an insane asylum, was baffled. He watched her waste away, her blood seeming to vanish. In desperation, he called upon his old mentor from Amsterdam, a man of immense learning and an open, unshakable mind. His name was Professor Abraham Van Helsing. He arrived, a strange, kindly, and energetic man, and examined Lucy. He saw the pinpricks, the pallor, the strange, unnatural wasting. And he understood. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, what they were dealing with. But he could not tell the others, not yet. They were men of science. They would not believe in the Nosferatu, in the undead. He began a desperate, secret treatment, transfusions of blood from her brave suitors, garlic flowers placed around her room. He was fighting a battle against a medieval monster with the tools of modern medicine. But the Count was too strong. A foolish servant, or perhaps the Count's own dark influence, removed the garlic. Lucy's mother, not understanding, threw open the windows to the night air. And in that moment of vulnerability, the monster struck one final, fatal time. Lucy Westenra died, but her death was not a peaceful release. She did not stay dead. She rose from her tomb, a creature of the night, a bluffer lady, as the local children called her, who stalked the misty lanes of Hampstead, preying on the innocent. Van Helsing, knowing the terrible truth, gathered the 3 men who had loved her, Arthur, Seward, and their friend Quincy Morris. He led them to her tomb, opened the coffin, and showed them the horrifying truth: the body was not decaying. It was beautiful, fresh, the lips red with stolen blood. And he told them that the only way to save her soul, to give her true peace, was to destroy the thing she had become. What followed was a ritual of unspeakable horror and heartbreak. Arthur, the man who had loved Lucy most, was given the task. Van Helsing handed him a wooden stake and a hammer. With tears streaming down his face, Arthur drove the stake through her heart. The thing in the coffin writhed and screamed, a horrible, inhuman sound that echoed through the stone chamber. Then, stillness. The face that had been a mask of predatory lust was transformed into one of serene, heartbreaking peace. Lucy was finally, truly, dead. Her soul was free. The men wept, but their sorrow was forged into a new, terrible purpose. They knew the name of the monster who had done this. They knew he had to be stopped. They swore a solemn oath, with their hands clasped over the scarred forehead of the woman they had all loved. The hunt for Dracula had begun. Part 3, The Hunt in London, the Journal of Dr. Seward and Van Helsing. The men who had wept over Lucy's body were no longer just suitors and friends. They were soldiers in a holy war. Professor Van Helsing, the old warrior scholar, took command. He revealed everything. The Nosferatu, the undead, the vampire. He told them of the creature's powers, immense strength, the ability to command the elements and animals, to vanish into mist, to transform into a bat or a wolf. He also told them of his weaknesses, the need to sleep in his native earth, the power of the crucifix, the wild rose, the sacred wafer, and the running water. And he told them that this monster, this Count Dracula, was not just a phantom of the past. He was here, in London, building a new hunting ground in the heart of the world's greatest empire. The group now had a name, the Crew of Light. And their mission was absolute. They would find Dracula, and they would destroy him. Their first task was a systematic and horrifying one. Dracula's power depended on the boxes of his native Transylvanian earth, which he had shipped to England. These were his sanctuaries, his refuges, the graves in which he could rest and regenerate. The men became detectives, tracing the records of the shipping company, breaking into warehouses and old, abandoned properties across London. One by one, they found the foul boxes, and one by one, Van Helsing performed a terrible cleansing ritual. He would open each box and place inside it a piece of the sacred wafer, a fragment of the host. The effect was instantaneous. The earth would seem to writhe, and a foul, repulsive odor would fill the air. The box was no longer a sanctuary, it was a trap. The hunter was becoming the hunted. But the Count was not a passive prey. He was a strategist, a predator of immense cunning, and he had been watching them. He understood their plan. And he decided to strike not at the men who hunted him, but at the heart of their group, Mina. Mina, who was sharp and resourceful, who had been transcribing their journals and compiling their evidence, became his target. One night, while the men were out destroying his lairs, the Count invaded the very sanctuary they had created for her. He found Mina alone. He did not kill her. He performed a ritual of far greater cruelty. He forced her to drink his blood, pressing her lips to a wound he had torn open on his own chest. "You are now flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood," he whispered. It was an act of spiritual rape, a mockery of marriage, designed to bind her soul to his own. The men returned to find a scene of devastation. Mina was alive, but she had been marked, corrupted. A sacred wafer, pressed to her forehead by Van Helsing, burned a deep, terrible scar into her flesh, marking her as tainted. But Mina, in her agony, did not break. She showed a strength that shamed them all. She was now psychically linked to Dracula. She could, under hypnosis, see through his eyes, feel what he felt. She became their greatest weapon. She begged them to use her, to track him, and to kill him, even if it meant her own death. She made each man swear that if she transformed into a monster like Lucy, they would do what was necessary. The Crew of Light, united in their love for her, swore to do what must be done. The final act was now inevitable. Dracula, his lairs destroyed, was fleeing back to his homeland, back to his castle, the source of his ancient power. He was traveling by sea, in one last box of earth. The crew of Light had no choice but to follow. They would have to intercept him before he reached his sanctuary, or all would be lost. Mina, their compass and their captive, was at the center of their desperate, epic chase. The hunt had only just begun. The real battle was waiting for them, back where the nightmare had started for Jonathan Harker. In the shadow of the Carpathian Mountains. In the castle of Dracula. Part 4, The Final Chase, The Journals of the Crew of Light. The hunt was no longer a secret war fought in the foggy streets of London. It was a desperate, breathless race across the entire continent of Europe. The Crew of Light, now a single, unified organism of vengeance, traveled by steam train, horse-drawn carriage, and riverboat, their eyes always fixed on the distant, jagged peaks of the Carpathian Mountains. Mina was their guide and their prisoner. Under the deep, trance-like state of hypnosis induced by Van Helsing, she became a living compass. Her stolen connection to the Count's mind was a torment, but also a beacon. She could feel him, alone, desperate, and afraid for the first time in centuries, fleeing back to his ancient lair. They tracked his route up the Danube, racing against time. The psychic bond was growing stronger, but so was its danger. Mina's own transformation was a shadow that hung over them all. She was a weapon that could turn on them at any moment. As they neared the end of their journey, Van Helsing made a crucial decision. The final battle would require both a physical and a spiritual defense. He and Mina would separate from the others and ride directly for the castle itself. His task was not to fight the Count, but to purify his lair, to make it impossible for him to ever return. Meanwhile, Jonathan Harker, Lord Godalming, Dr. Seward, and the brave American, Quincy Morris, would track the Count's final transport, a gypsy caravan carrying the last, precious box of his native earth. The two groups divided, a band of brothers and a lone warrior with his ward. The air grew colder, the landscape more desolate and wild. They were entering the domain of the vampire, a place where his power was at its zenith. The final confrontation erupted on a rocky road not far from the castle. As the sun began to sink low in the sky, the Crew of Light intercepted the terrified gypsies. A savage, chaotic battle broke out. The gypsies, loyal to their dark master, fought fiercely with knives and clubs. The four men, driven by a fury born of love and loss, fought back. In the chaos, Jonathan and Quincy fought their way to the large wooden box that was the heart of their quest. With the last of his strength, Quincy forced the lid open. Inside, the Count lay still, his eyes open but vacant, waiting for the sun to set. Jonathan, seeing the monster's throat exposed, raised his kukri knife and, with a single, powerful stroke, slashed through the vampire's neck. At that exact moment, the sun finally set. Quincy, already mortally wounded from the fight, drove his bowie knife into the Count's heart. The effect was instantaneous and horrifying. The body did not bleed. It crumbled into a fine, gray dust, leaving only a pile of ancient, impure matter. The creature that had terrorized the world for centuries was no more. But the victory came at a terrible cost. Quincy Morris, the youngest and bravest of them, fell back, a smile on his face, his life bleeding out onto the foreign soil. Far above, on the battlements of the castle, Van Helsing and Mina saw the final act. As the Count crumbled to dust, Mina screamed. The terrible, burning scar on her forehead vanished, leaving her skin as pure and clean as it had ever been. The curse was lifted. She was free. The old professor watched the sun finally set over the jagged peaks and gave a prayer of thanks. The long, dark night that had fallen over the world was over. The vampire was dead. The crew of Light had won, but they would carry the scars of this battle, visible and invisible, for the rest of their lives. They had stared into the abyss, and they had not blinked. Epilogue: Why Dracula Still Haunts Us. And so, the story of the vampire of Transylvania comes to an end. But the monster Bram Stoker created has never truly died. He has been reborn in 1,000 films, 1,000 books, 1,000 nightmares. Why? What is it about this story, written over a century ago by a quiet Irish theatre manager, that still holds such power over us? Perhaps it is because Dracula is more than a monster. He is a mirror. He reflects our deepest, most repressed Victorian fears, the fear of the foreigner invading our homeland, the fear of a disease that corrupts the blood, the fear of a sexuality that is wild and untamed and predatory. He is the aristocrat who feeds on the common people, the ancient evil that refuses to die in the modern world of science and reason. But the story is also a testament to something far more powerful than fear. It is a testament to the power of love, of friendship, of sacrifice. It is about a small band of ordinary people who, armed with faith, courage, and a portable typewriter, stood against the darkness and refused to yield. Jonathan, Mina, Van Helsing, Quincy, John, Arthur, they did not have superpowers. They had each other. And that was enough. Their story reminds us that the monsters of this world, whatever form they take, can be defeated. Not by a single hero, but by a fellowship. A crew of light. I am Melesias. This has been the story of Dracula, as I have understood it. Thank you for listening. If this dark and heroic journey has moved you, please subscribe. And the next time you hear a strange sound in the night, or feel a cold draft on your neck, remember, the light is always stronger than the darkness. You just have to be brave enough to hold it up. Until next time.